before a conversation, the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, how did a chocolatier, somebody that's entrenched in making amazing products for general consumer,
Hmm.
get into the position that you're in, leading a cannabis company's, uh, lack of a better word, edible
Yeah,
chocolate
edible department.
department?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's things by circumstance, I guess. So you're right. I was in the what I call the conventional mainstream industry. I worked for a global chocolate company, and before that, my parents they had a bakery pastry shop in Montreal, Canada. So, I started basically as a pastry chef. I grew up in a bakery, and then I super specialized in chocolate and confection because it's an interesting branch of pastry. So, when you do pastries, it's all about precision, cooking, baking, mixing, composing recipes, really. And this avenue of chocolate confectionery or chocolaterie, as we say it, it was very interesting, and it's more like a little bit more refined. So I dug into that and took a lot of different seminars, went to Europe, um, and then I was working with this very large company called Berry Callebaut, who is the supplier of chocolate for the world. They supply chocolate for large and small companies and little artisans, and they have a huge selection of chocolate. So back in Montreal, they liked what I was doing, and they asked me to do some classes, sporadically classes for other chefs. So that's kind of like how I got my name got out there, because I was doing classes and specific trainings for other professionals. So I did that for about 8 years, and that took me around the country and around the world, really. I did classes in pretty much every country in America and South America. I did a few classes in Europe, and then I did a lot of troubleshooting. So part of my job was to create recipes, yes, but also help people resolve problems and issues that we all have during our manufacturing. So chocolate is very specific. It, you can't just like melt it and cool it down. So you have to do a certain process called tempering, which a lot of people kind of hear about the word, but to do it is something a little different. So all of that is fascinating to me, because the science of confectionery and chocolate and cooking sugars with other ingredients like cream and butter, it's chemistry. And so that's kind of my I'm inclining on the chemistry side, but I'm an artist because I like to do cool things that are different, Uh, and then in the center, I'm kind of a businessman. So it's an interesting mix, because a lot of my colleagues, pastry chefs, chocolatiers, they're very creative. They are artists. They want to do creations, and they want to bring joy and happiness to people. And now and then they get submerged by their passion. They lose track of, if you have a business, you need to make money. And I think this is very true more than ever, because the price of chocolate, it has skyrocketed in the last year and a half because of supply. So that aside, so I was doing, I'm quite well known, I guess, in the industry for chocolate and confectionery. And that's how I got demand, or people were asking me to help them out on the West Coast when the cannabis industry was just starting. And so you touched the base, something earlier, is like a lot of people get into the cannabis industry, but they don't necessarily have any kind of training or knowledge. They're just entrepreneurs, and they want to, create something cool. So, you know, I'm sure they hire consultants for, like, how do I grow plants? How do I process plants? What kind of machine do I need? And so on. And that's kind of what I do for confectionery and chocolate. So I did a lot of consulting for different companies in Oregon, in California, Arizona, um, a little bit everywhere on the West Coast, and also on the East Coast. Insa and I got in contact as consultants. So I came over in 2018, I believe, when regulation they just passed recreational in Massachusetts. So now they went from medical only to recreational. And then obviously the business kind of started exploding, and they wanted, gummy drops, they wanted chocolate, and they were having issues with both of these products. I don't know where they got some formulas or recipes, and I came over, resolved most of their problems in a couple of weeks. And so we kept in touch. I came back 3, 4, 5 times. And just before COVID, they made me an offer. They're like, "Oh, you should come over, work for us." And I was working in Portland, Oregon at that time for some pretty large chocolate company, like a just conventional company. And so still doing consulting left and right. And when COVID happened, all the consulting gigs disappeared and everything was on pause. And yet cannabis was sort of exploding. So they still asked me, they're like, "If you want to come over anytime, you come over." So I did move. I moved from Portland to Massachusetts, and I started like full time in early 2020 or late 2019. So it was like the beginning of COVID. So I got here and then we just went full blast. My philosophy to them was, let's start at the very top in quality, because what I was seeing on the West Coast and a little bit around where I would see customers, it was all about the cannabis, of course, but also making it as cheap as possible so they have the biggest profits possible. So they were using compound chocolate, which is artificial or imitation chocolate. They were using in their gummies just water, sugar, corn syrup. So and from my background, I said, we can do way better than this. We can do outstanding edibles. So high quality, real chocolate, real fruit purees in the gummy drops, real butter in the truffles, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I know. That's my background. High quality French, Belgian, European style products. So it was kind of easy. And the owners of Insa kind of gave me free rein to just bring to the table the best products possible. So that's what we did. And we gained a reputation because other people in the industry were doing, kind of rather cheap products because it's all about the THC, which I'll come back to later. It's an interesting dilemma. But in any case, so we continued and focused on that quality first and beauty of the product, nice packaging. And I think we've never veered off of that. So people always compliment us and me, even in private. They're like, "Why does your product taste so good?" I don't know. What's the magic? And in reality, I used to say this to other chefs. It's interesting that if you have a 5-star restaurant and then you have a 0-star restaurant, really the chef has access to the same ingredients: meat, seafood, butter, cream, everything, chicken. Everybody can buy basically the same product. The low-end restaurant is going to buy the cheapest possible, maybe frozen, pre-portioned, but they have access to these great products, and they choose not to. And sometimes we also often talk about the 5-star restaurant because they're in the press and they have the accolades and they have recognition and high prices and such. But I think everyone has access to the same ingredients. So it's a decision to say, I'm not going to make premium quality. I'm going to make average or low quality because I want to make as much money as I want.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because typically what we see in the industry is it's cannabis first, the edible mouth experience second, where you flip the script and your approach is amazing chocolate, amazing food product first,
Yep.
and infused with amazing cannabis, which you guys grow too. But
Yeah. Yeah.
the North
I always
Star.
say that happened. It happens to have cannabis in it.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. How like from a business perspective, and you've seen this firsthand. You were a consultant in our industry. You were sought out, and people saw that, hey, there's a light bulb moment here. I can increase my sales. I can really impact my business if I approach this in this angle. Me, you've seen the success in Insa. How has, from the time that you maybe consulted with them to now, how has that changed?
Well, I think um, what is happening in Massachusetts, and it's happened on the West Coast years ago. You're having like price compression now. There's a lot of
Mhm.
competitors, and now this the point I was going to touch about is like when the consumer, the typical consumer, is buying THC, is buying a cannabis product, and is less concerned about flavor and quality and more about how high can I get or how much THC am I buying for price X. And, and this is where it's interesting when I step back and look at my training in the conventional industry and as a businessman, I I get it. I get it that people are comparing two cannabis products. And if both of them are $25 or one is 20 and one is 25, the typical cannabis user is going to pick the $20 thing
Mhm.
because is it how much THC in this one, how much THC in this one? And I think that's where the dilemma is. Um, but in my opinion, when people taste a great product and it tastes really good and it's pleasant and it's satisfying and it leaves you like a wow impression, even if this product is $25, I think you're going to go for the $25 because it tastes good. In the edible, it's like in the word edible, it has to be palatable. It needs to taste good. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't taste good, I think people will not come back or they'll try something else. Right. So I'm a hard believer that quality and flavor is going to supersede all of that because they will come back when even if they say, well, I'm going to treat myself. I'll get an Insa bar today instead of another cheaper bar. Great.
Mhm.
If you want to consider it as a better treat or higher quality, or maybe you want to gift it, um, I think that's always on the forefront. For me, it's important that the quality remain. Um, and I've seen
Have you guys insulated yourself from price compression because of the quality?
a little bit, but we see the price compression across the board, whether it's flour to edibles, um, because that's the problem is, or the question is, when you have too many players, people start dropping the price, and everyone's going to suffer. So the pie is getting cut up in more pieces. Um, but again, I think quality is going to remain a winner because people like good products
Mhm.
and predictability. When people travel and they go to a Starbucks, whether it's in France or in the US, they know what to expect. So
Yeah.
predictability in a restaurant industry, in a bakery, and people want to know that every time they go back, it's going to taste the same. So that's pretty important. Then includes the other ingredients, the THC. Um, how good is it?
Mhm.
When you talk about milligrams per serving, whether you have cannabis distillate from company A or company B, on paper, the distillate quality is about the THC percentage, right?
Mhm.
So with all the regulations in Massachusetts, for example, each portion needs to be 5 milligrams for uh, the uh, recreational industry. So each piece 5 milligram, package maximum 100 milligram. So whether it's from A or B, it's 100 milligram. It's regulated by portion and package. So what's the difference? When you're talking about cannabis, what's the difference? You have the same milligram. Now it comes into workmanship, quality of product, packaging, freshness, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where consumers ultimately are going to start making a difference. Right now, it's still a little bit, I would say, people are getting much more educated, more savvy, I think. But with even price compression across the board, everything in the grocery store is more expensive. So if you can, save $5 here or there, people are going to do it. But I think we're not immune to the price compression, but I think we're in a position where people recognize the quality. And yes, it might be a little bit more expensive, but it's certainly way better.
Yeah, you've hit the right segment of the industry. I was going to ask you, what is your thought process on, so, when you're thinking about creating a new product or keeping a line going, how much thought do you put into the experience of eating the product to the experience of what you feel after consumption?
That's a good question. When I develop products, and for me, it's a never ending. I don't, set aside that Monday and then create a product. It's an ongoing thing that never stops. I'm influenced by temperature, travel, availability of ingredients, and so on. And then my culinary side wants to explore deeper and deeper into, kind of this blend of savory and sweet, which is kind of interesting. People like the sweet, salty, kind of the fine line, and it has to be well balanced. Because if something is too salty, you miss the mark, But I think I don't create a product specifically for the after. The after is going to happen anyways because I'm going to infuse the product. But I do want to. A lot of my chocolate bars, for instance, I add inclusions. Inclusions are little bits and pieces that you can put inside the bar to have crunch or fizziness or texture. And then sometimes I even decorate the top of the bars with a little bit more of these inclusions to make sure the consumer sees that there's little bits of caramel or there's sea salt, or I'm going to do another kind of Oreo cookie bar next year. So of course there's going to be crushed Oreo cookies and there's going to be a sprinkle on top, and it has to be approachable. So this is something that I realized when I was a pastry chef. I remember very well one instance where I did a chocolate mousse, a white chocolate mousse with green anise seed. So anise seed is not licorice. It's more anise and fennel, more like fennel, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually the seed of the fennel plant. So it's very delicate, and it marries very, very well with raspberries. So I made a white chocolate mousse with raspberries, and the mousse was infused with green anise seed. And when I was describing it to people, they couldn't grasp what anise seed was, but the piece was tremendous. So I just stopped describing it as with anise seed. I just said, infused white chocolate mousse with raspberries. And then they would taste it and be like, oh my God, this is so delicate. What is that flavor? So it's not about in your face flavor, like rip your tongue apart. It's more of when you infuse or you soak or you like a refined tea. If you overdo it, the tea is bitter and doesn't taste good, but you have to dose it correctly. So that's kind of interesting one of our best selling bars is a double sea salt caramel. And I call it double sea salt caramel because we have a really great Belgian white chocolate that is caramelized. So it's just like, it has this nice color, this nice warm flavor of caramel. There's a little bit of sea salt, and then I supplemented with little bits of salted caramel, hard salted caramel bits. So it's double caramel. And that bar, we won awards a couple of years ago. best bar in Massachusetts because it delivers on flavor, and then you have a little bit of texture. And when you bite and it crunches in your head, it's pleasant. Like a chip. A chip is
Mhm,
pleasant because you hear the crispiness and the crunch.
mhm.
So back to the question, I do compose the products to have the best culinary experience, and it happens to have THC.
Yeah. Does the terpene profile of the cannabis come out in the product?
Sometimes, yes. And then we are playing with supplementing with some terpenes to have that entourage effect that's specific. So we're doing in different states in Pennsylvania, we're doing products specifically designed that way because it's a medical
Mhm.
market. In Massachusetts, we're playing around with that all the time, especially in the vapes. The vapes, they do supplement with different terpenes to fit specific profiles. But that is a very interesting avenue. I think that is underexplored, and it's probably going to grow more and more. Um, and I would say the consumer also 5 years ago didn't know about terpenes. Now they know about it
Yeah.
because
Well, I'm now thinking about, when you smoke cannabis and say you eat a mango, the mango enhances your experience of the cannabis. And
right.
just thinking about how much you probably geek out on
Yep.
on doing that.
Yep. And there's a movement in food that's called food pairing. Where you're going to say, "Oh, what pairs well with scallops?" And then it's all about the molecular uh, how products exudes different flavors, which are terpenes, and then what terpenes match well with the other. And like I was describing that pastry, anise, green anise seed and raspberry are made like to be married.
Mhm.
And it's not
Yeah.
obvious when you just look at those two products, you're probably not going to do it. And that's another aspect of where a high-end restaurant, a chef that's very versed in what he's creating and the food that is around him. Some chefs have that natural kind of instinct of taking this and that and putting it together in the right proportions to have an experience that is, out of this world.
I think you guys have tapped into such a huge competitive advantage in having a culinary experience in your edibles. How has, and if you can share this, how has this impact the overall sales? Have you seen just the overall company sales, the edible portion increase in proportion to everything else?
Yes, and also I think it has been much more stable. Our sales of edible has been more stable than other family of products. So,
Yeah.
like I said, like vapes and joints, people and
That's a commodity sometimes,
yeah,
right?
they become commodity. And I talked to our head grower here, and sometimes he's like, people are so focused at the highest THC possible. When a joint with a flower that has like 24% THC might be way better than something that's 32.
Mhm.
But but it's again that allure, and I call it the uh, product value equation. Because if it's $25 for 32% and $25 for 24%, what are you going to take? You
Yeah.
and I questioned it early when was doing consulting. I said, why don't you meaning the cannabis industry, why don't you sell by the milligram? It would be much more fair. So like if you want to have something that's 32 or 35%, you're going to pay a little bit more than something that's 24,
Mhm.
right? It's almost like gasoline. High
Yeah.
octane, you pay more. So I think from the early beginning of the cannabis legalization, it was a little bit like the Far West. It was all over the place, and the pricing was all over the place. And then it kind of defined itself as they do flat pricing for specific products because it's easier.
Have you seen the consumer wants, has it evolved? What I mean by that is when I go into a cannabis shop today and I'm buying cannabis. I care less about the TC percentage and just more on what feeling am I after. Has that changed at all from your experience and
Yes.
also from an edible perspective as well?
Yes. I think, of course, the biggest disease now that people have is lack of sleep. So the products that are, for instance, the gummies or the tablets or even a chocolate bar that we have for sleep aid, those are very popular and people are getting more sophisticated. And now we're also using CBN and CBD, so other cannabinoids to help create the product that is the best execution of that, you know.
Mhm.
And like you said earlier, you're a consumer that is more inclined about how you're going to feel or how you want to feel for the health benefits, I would say. And when I think that's something that consumers now, the line has been, uh, I wouldn't say erased, but it's been very blurred that now people, they know that there's a benefit to cannabis. It's just like saying, 20 years ago, if you would say like chamomile and herbal teas, you were like a granola marginal person.
Yeah.
Until like now, it's like it's much more common, and then people know that chamomile calms you and mint excites you, and so on. And that's where I think people now are getting much more in tune with what they need uh, of this product, which is cannabis. They're much more in tune at saying like, it's not just about getting high. I just want to have this experience or this calmness or the focus.
Tell me a little bit about what is your best-selling product? What do people like about it, and how does it make people feel?
So that double sea salt caramel bar is still the best selling bar
Hmm.
for the chocolate side. But we also created about 2.5 years ago, I created a little peanut butter cup that I ended up making it a little smaller, like bite size. And we call those smooches because we kind of crush them flat. And so it's a little disc, if you will, and it has a really creamy peanut butter filling inside. So that sells very well. And then on the gummy drops, the sleep gummy, we have one that has melatonin, one that has CBN and CBD, and one that has CBN and melatonin. So it's like
Mm.
we're kind of making an offering that is well balanced because it's not just about saying, hey, it has melatonin, and some people don't tolerate melatonin or don't like it. So we kind of declined the offering to have three, and probably we're going to have more products that are uh, refined and tuned to the customer's desire.
When you're creating a product, what does the R&D look like? How do you think about a product, and do you what does the testing, the trying it, making sure that it meets your standard, obviously is really high. What does that look like?
It looks like a little bit of a disjointed experiment. Like I said, I create products like I have behind me here. I have tons of products in my rack here that are in development. So
Mhm.
they haven't hit the street yet. Um, I'm kind of testing size, pricing, flavor, and then doing different versions of the same flavor. So just like today, I'm working on a somewhat of a taffy, if you will, like a chewy piece. And we want to do honey and lemon, which is interesting because you're like, is it honey and lemon or lemon and honey?
Mhm.
You see the difference because I
Yeah.
can I can push harder on the honey and less on the lemon, or vice versa. And then as a general uh, process, the R&D process is usually, for me anyways, it takes about 6 months. So from concept of an idea, so like let's take this one, this lemon honey taffy. I'm gonna start by looking at it, thinking about it, creating a few base recipes, and then I test the base recipes, and then I quickly go to pricing. So I need to cost out what I'm creating because obviously when I'm doing high end, high quality, expensive ingredients, it has to cost out in the early stage. I don't want to be at the end close to a commercialization and be like, whoops, it's costing too much, you know. So then when you do your initial costing, if there's a challenge, you have to go back to square one and simplify it or change the ingredients or try to source different products that are going to be similar, or you kill the product also. So this happens quite often that you kill a product. I did for a special event, I did a Dubai chocolate cookie version. So it's like the Dubai bar with that pistachio and kataifi that everyone talks
My
about.
wife is obsessed with that right now, by the
Yeah.
way.
So I did like an Oreo cookie actually. But I did different versions, like this one. And it's actually, here's the thing that I also imagine. I'm going to try to break it apart here. So what I did is I put an Oreo cookie inside.
Oh, that looks fantastic.
Yeah. And then the pistachio top. And the reason I did that is because here in Massachusetts, I think people are, if you hear pistachio, they're like, oh, I don't like pistachio. They just right away say, I don't like pistachio. And you're like, wait, have you tasted or have you seen the Dubai bar? And they're like, yeah, but I don't like pistachio. So I had that in mind when I did the samples, and then we tested it in our Springfield store, which is our largest and most popular store. And so I took some of those cookies uninfused, and for a special event on a Friday, I went personally to the store and I just was offering these cookies. And over, people were like, oh, no, I don't like pistachio. And I'd be like, oh, but there's an Oreo cookie under. But they're like, okay, I'll try it because there's a cookie and I know what an Oreo cookie is. So you see, the hook is the Oreo cookie.
Yeah.
And the pistachio is the refinement.
And how
So,
did you know that that goes well together? Because it sounds fantastic. I want to try that.
yeah, well, I have a very good memory of flavors. And I think most everyone has this good memory. Because like if I tell you butter popcorn, in your head, you can taste it, right?
Yeah.
So it's in your memory bank of flavors. So my memory bank of flavor is very large and very deep, I guess. And I can almost imagine what it's going to taste like before doing it. And like I said, the reason I picked the Oreo is because of the hurdle of offering something pistachio to people. And then I knew there would be a reaction. And then overwhelmingly, when they tasted it, they're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Because the pistachio it's nutty. It's nutty. And then the kataifi, the little phyllo dough, it adds crunch. So it's a pleasant experience. And then it's covered with chocolate. So it's like, what is it you're not going to like, you know? So
You hit the
it
nail on
was
the head, though.
extremely well received. So I'm working on editing the product to make it viable for commercialization.
I see. So come up with a concept, make sure that it's commercially viable, product market tested. Once it hits that benchmark where you're like, okay, we can invest more resources into this.
Correct.
Now you're at the commercial viable stage where how do we actually make this?
Yeah. Yeah. And you see the value equation. So this is another one that I'm kind of like, it has just Merry Christmas on it. So this one is a simplified, bigger, flatter version. And basically that price equation needs to work.
Yeah.
And it comes back to like, if the customer says, how much is this piece? And I say, just for example, $10. And then it's 5 milligrams. This is $10, 5 milligrams, but they can buy a bar for $25 for 100 milligrams.
Yeah.
You see the challenge.
Yeah.
So now it's all about the experience and the flavor and the crispiness and all that stuff. Now it becomes kind of like a treat.
Yeah.
So, because I can't sell a box of 20 cookies for $25,
Yeah.
you know? So
how much of your pricing is influenced by THC, because we're in the cannabis business, and how much is it comparable to, say, if I went to a bakery and I bought a pistachio Oreo cookie, it would cost me X dollars. Do you factor those two and figure out what the right pricing would be?
Yeah, I see your question. And it's becoming very close to equal. So when I had my pastry shop bakery, I did high-end chocolates, like you see in high-end shops with colors and infused with tea and honey and raspberry and so on. So little bonbons, very kind of European style. And back then they were about 250 each, right?
Mhm.
So now we're getting very close where the price, including cannabis, is almost at par with that, which is kind of crazy. So now the THC factor is getting, that's what is being compressed.
Yeah.
You still have a good quality product. You still have them, their grams. So let's say this cookie is like 50 grams or something. Whether the cookie is 5 grams or 50 grams, the price is getting very close to be par with the conventional industry.
Mhm.
And so that's where it's going to be interesting what is the bottom? When is it going to stop? Because then something is going to have to give, whether
Yeah, because
it's,
I would imagine the cannabis infused has to cost more because there's just so much more process involved in
yep.
putting in the plant into a high quality cookie or a
Yep.
pastry.
But I think, there's probably a few companies, I don't know if it's true here in Massachusetts, but like in California and Oregon, when I left Oregon, uh, some companies were just dumping flour. They were like down to $55 an ounce. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, why, why are you doing this? It's going to ruin the industry for everyone.
Yeah.
So, like or who's going to do this kind of awkward move or sometimes it's last ditch effort. They're going out of business and then they just dump the products and then it damages everyone's business.
How do you pick what cannabis product to go into your your cookies or your bakery products? What is the process involved in that? Where I want this strain, it's gonna mirror really well with that pistachio cookie. What goes into that?
And so we are actually very lucky because we process everything from seed to finished goods. So we do our own grow and then we do our own extraction. So we have the luxury of controlling that.
Mhm.
Um, Most distillates are a blend of flowers. So like a typical distillate is not strain specific or even variety specific, but we can do it. And sometimes we have the luxury of being able to take a strain that is more sativa, for instance, and making a distillate out of that. Uh, and also, that's where the terpenes come into play. You can mimic the profile of a sativa or an indica by picking the right terpenes that are going to be supplemented to the distillate.
That's what I was gonna ask you.
Yep. And then we also do blends. So some, like I was mentioning earlier, when we do a gummy that has uh, 5 milligrams CBN, CBD, and THC, our lab creates a distillate that is blended already. So it's above a full spectrum, if you will, because
Yeah.
we've the sliced the cannabinoids into segments, and then we assemble those segments into this one-to-one-to-one distillate.
Mhm.
So we can do almost anything we want because we have the control here from the beginning till the end. So we can tell the grower, hey, we're going to need more indica in 3 months. So they're going to plant more of those strains um, to accept the demand.
Julian, not a lot of cannabis businesses have the luxury of hiring a world class chocolatier onto their
Yeah.
team. If I was somebody that was looking to actually, no, I should ask you this. Do you guys wholesale your product to other dispensaries?
Yep. In Massachusetts, of course.
Oh,
Yep.
so okay. So in Massachusetts, if you're listening to this, you lucked out because you can join the party in offering these goods, where would somebody start if they weren't in Massachusetts?
Well, they can come visit. And then we do have a large grow operation in Florida. So we have 10 stores in Florida. It's only a medical market, so restricted assortment. So we do some chocolate bars, some gummy drops, some tablets, a little bit like aspirins, if you will, like a little pill. So we do different products and, of course, joints and vapes and all those things. So in Florida, we have Insa, Florida. In Pennsylvania, we have Insa, Pennsylvania. We have a grow, transformation, extraction. We're opening our first store in a month or two, but we do sell a lot wholesale in Pennsylvania to all the other dispensaries. So
Oh, amazing.
In Pennsylvania, we were kind of the supplier to all the dispensaries. And finally, we are going to have a store not to compete with our customers, but more to have more exposure to the consumer.
Hmm. That's
And then
amazing.
in Massachusetts, we have 5 stores, medical and recreational. And that's the limit in Massachusetts, the regulation. As you know, every state is different. So each company cannot have more than 5 stores and a blend of stores. So it's kind of a little complicated. And if you want to expand, you have to buy out other companies. So it's
Uh,
interesting. So,
yeah.
as you know, it's not universal and easy. Every state has different rules, different dosage, different regulation, different testing, uh, packaging limitation, naming, denominations, all of that. Like in Florida, for instance, I can't say cheesecake bar or cheesecake chocolate bar because they're going to say, oh, cheesecake is a dessert and you can't call it that. So, and that's where you see the wacky names sometimes like on the West Coast or in
Yeah.
different areas, you see wacky names and you're like, what is that? That's the one reason.
I always think to myself, not recreating the wheel and leveraging the people that are doing the work already. So if you're in Massachusetts or in an area where you guys inside is around, you guys have lucked out. From your experience, and you're in the industry, and you probably try other edibles yourself. When you're eating an edible, what thoughts go through your mind that, hey, this is really good, and what are some thoughts in your mind that, hey, this is actually not really well made?
Yeah, I'm a very difficult customer.
Yeah, well, for sure.
So it's funny because like I actually don't taste a lot of other competitors' products
Hmm.
just because I tend to always be disappointed. And this is my problem even to go to restaurants. I don't go to restaurants a lot because I know how to make it. And then when I'm being served a plate that is disappointing, I just right away I was like, I should have stayed home. You
Yeah,
know what I
no,
mean?
'cause you have such a high bar, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like I think there's something for everyone out there. I'm not saying that we're the ultimate. What is ultimate? I think
Mhm.
consumers have to choose and pick and choose, and I think we try very hard also to have great service in our stores, um, pricing that is fair
Wait, I was
for the
gonna ask
quality.
you that.
Yeah.
What is the strategy on if I'm a retailer today and I wanna expand the edibles that I'm selling? Can you walk me through if you can share some of the strategies that a retailer should think about? Shelf life, pricing, margin, all of those things.
I'm not involved in sales per se, but I think what you just mentioned is typical. I think we're also seeing smaller stores struggling because you see this price compression is being difficult on if you just have a dispensary, you're kind of stuck with the only the margins that you can make. So you don't have the manufacturer's margin, you have a wholesaler margin. This is where it becomes kind of difficult for like the stores to pick and choose. They're going to be offered all sorts of different products, and fortunately or unfortunately, they're going to be inclined sometimes to take the lesser quality because they're just thinking about margin, you
Yeah.
know. But I think all of this, when you really think about it, um, it's it's very parallel to the normal world, if I can call it that. If you own a supermarket, you're going to be pushed. Tons of people are going to say, "Hey, buy my ketchup," and you're like, "Yeah, but your ketchup's so expensive," and then they decide, and then they give you shelf space for 3 months, and if it doesn't sell through, you're out. And
That's
it's
true.
happened. It's the same. So you have to do like a promotions. You have to do sometimes a fill, which is buy 2 boxes, get 1 box, and things like that. But under the regulations from each state. So it's not to say that we give product away, but we push promotions sometimes to have those specific stores talk about our gummies or talk about our chocolate bars during a specific time frame.
Mhm.
So that's where it's very parallel to the normal uh, retail and commercialization industry. The retailer has to make his margins, the manufacturer has to make a margin, and if both of them on both sides starts cutting it to shaving it to hair thin margins, it's not going to end well.
No, you see that a lot with
Yeah,
the, I guess, the s- the cycle of states. Every state goes through the exact
yeah,
same,
yeah.
when there's not a product, too much product, and all the way
Crash.
through. Yeah.
And it's funny that
Julian,
like the new states open up and they repeat the mistakes.
it's yeah,
I don't get
it's
it.
until we get the ability to ship product across state lines, we're, we'll see this story over and over and over again. It's
Yeah, yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I really love what you guys have done to isolate yourself a bit from that fluctuation and come out with quality first. And people come back for that experience.
I think so. I think so. That's at the end, people, I mean, look at yourself, how your behavior, like if you go to a nice coffee shop and then you go to another coffee shop and you're like, it's okay, it's closer. But at the end, you're still going to go sometimes at the better coffee shop because you know it's better.
Yeah. You know what
And
you're getting.
yeah, you know what you're getting. And just one last story. Like when I had my pastry shop, Costco was beginning, like in Canada, and then I was selling fruit pies, cherry pies and peach pies and cakes and all sorts of things. And then suddenly the sales of pies kept going down and down and down. And I was wondering why. And then finally, some of the customers were almost friends, and I'm like, "Don't you buy pies anymore?" It's like, "Oh, well, Costco has this giant pie
Yeah.
for the same price. So like $10, $10. Why would I get the smaller pie?" And at the end, I just stopped making pies because it's not viable anymore. I can't sell it for 6 to gain back the customer because I'm not going to make it 1 cent. So things evolve, things change, and the maturity of a company lies into when you know that you can stop a product.
Oh,
You
that's a
know,
really good point.
because sometimes we hang on and we like, oh, I don't want to delete this item because I like it. Yeah, okay, you like it, but it doesn't sell.
Hmm.
Kill it. So this is something that we do not on a regular basis, but from my perspective, I started doing seasonal products for that very reason. When you do seasonal products, you're testing the market. You come out with something a little racy, or I have some stuff next year for our 420. So the 420 holiday, I'm gonna do a Fritos milk chocolate bar.
Fritos milk chocolate bar.
Yeah, so it's crushed Fritos in a very creamy, delicious milk chocolate, and it has that perfect salty, sweet, creamy thing. That's like amazing.
Fritos the chips?
Yeah, corn chips
Wow.
Fritos. Yep. So uh, next time you're to the supermarket, buy a good chocolate bar, buy a bag of Fritos, and then eat them together and let me know.
You're, I no, I will. Because when you said Fritos, I was like, is there? I know Fritos. Fritos is those barbecue chips, right?
Well, you get the classic ones that are not barbecue. They're just like
Oh, okay.
they're
Yeah.
like the little strips
Yeah.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
Frito Lay. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's a seasonal that I come out with this seasonal for the 420 holiday, and depending if it's super well received, it might become an everyday bar.
Mm.
Or if it's marginally received and people are like, it was okay.
Well, you're
Then
gonna blow people's minds when
yeah, that's
your brain doesn't register when you say Fritos and chocolate.
yeah, but it's freaking amazing, really
Wow, I'm gonna
crazy.
have to try that. I'm gonna take your word for it. I'm gonna have to
Yep.
try that.
So I have my lineup kind of ready for next year, the 2026. So like for Valentine's Day, I'm going to do a cookie dough smooch. So the filling is going to taste and look like a cookie dough. And what was that? Yeah. So it's this big, but it
Mm.
has little chocolate chips, and the inside is a cookie dough filling. So
That sounds
that's
good.
very nostalgic. Like people know, like cookie dough, like it's one of the most popular ice creams.
Yeah.
So for Valentine's Day, that's going to be a seasonal. So it's going to come in and then go out.
Mhm.
And if people ask for it more and more, then it's going to become a mainstream product.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's part of the R&D process for us. We try out stuff. When it sticks, we push it.
Julian. I want to thank you so much for coming on. I love hearing passion, and it's very evident that you love what you do,
Yeah,
and it's
it's awesome.
infectious. It's
Yeah, yeah.
infectious. You're like in the playground every day. Where can our listeners go online and find you?
Well, so insa.com.
Mhm.
And of course we can't ship across the border, unfortunately. But if people are in Massachusetts or in Florida or Pennsylvania, you can find our products for sure.
Guys, if you guys are lucky enough to be in those states, reach out. That'll be the first thing I do when I come into town. Julian, thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
me today.
And if you're in Massachusetts, let me know. I'll give you a tour.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. Well,
Awesome.
I'm gonna take you up for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for joining us,
My
joining me,
pleasure.
and um, gotta have you
Anytime.
back. Thank you.